Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Midnight Thoughts podcast, where we talk about the indie film world and what it exactly entails. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, because I know I'm having one, and relax. Well, first of all, there will probably be a lot of people not really familiar with what exactly an indie film is. But don't worry, I'm not a pro either. I will learn and you will learn and it'll be a blast. So first of all, what is an indie film? Alright, well, I got this from Wikipedia, but fuck it, Wikipedia is as good a source as anything, right? So an independent film or an indie film is a feature movie, which is a full-length film, or a short film, which is short, that is produced outside of a major film system. Plus, it's produced and distributed by independent entertainment companies. Simply, it's movies that are produced outside of the mainstream. Now, some of you will probably wonder, why do people make films outside of the big film industry? Well, first and foremost, for many filmmakers, there's not really another option because they don't have, a big connection with Hollywood producers, which is something that's, pretty hard to come by, especially when you're starting. So they're kind of appointed to themselves to make the film and eventually make their dreams come true. But for many, it's also that they just don't want to give up their vision. Because when you work with a big studio and that studio, is pumping a lot of money inside of your film, they want to ensure that the film is good, which will often take away from the vision of the filmmaker, especially if they are somewhat unknown. I heard about this from Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, who some of you know will know from Superbad, because they recently started their own independent film and television production company, Point Grey, which is super interesting, and they're super interesting guys. And there's this interview about them that I'll put in the description, where they talk about how they hated to have a big budget because everything they would say was looked at into an extreme detail, which took away from their artistic vision. And that is what happens with these big blockbusters. It's kind of, after a while, it's just all about the money, because there are like really big companies behind these films that pump a lot of like millions upon millions in certain movies and certain ideas. So they want to be completely sure that the film's actually like really fucking good. Like they have to kind of be sure that the film is going to bring back the investment that they made. And often there is no actual artistic risk involved in it anymore, which is one big reason why many find indie films actually better, which is because of the passion. And this doesn't mean that people who work in the Hollywood factory aren't passionate, because they probably are. I mean, they can't, it's their job, so they definitely are passionate about it. But people that work in the indie film scene aren't tied down to a big studio who wants to make as much money as possible and thus attract as many demographics as possible. It's kind of what this, about filmmaking, what they say is, if you have a really small niche, if your target audience is really small, then you're kind of making the film for everyone. The smaller your film, the people are for who you make the film, the bigger the audience eventually becomes. But they kind of want to be sure that it's gonna be gonna bring back the money that they put into it. But that means that people who make an indie film can tell the story exactly the way they want to tell the story, because a big blockbuster mostly is looked at through a different way. It's something worth selling. It's not something worth watching. They got to be able to. That's why they have like these crazy trailers and shit. Because they got to be able to sell it. Not just the film, because an indie film usually goes through word of mouth, and they don't really have a big marketing campaign. So yeah, they do it very differently. And that is kind of why the indie film world is so darn exciting. And most of you probably have already seen indie films, even if you know it or not. And I looked online and found some famous indie films. Let me check it out what they are. Alright, here they are. So, the first one I kind of picked was American Beauty. I think most people have seen this film. It's been on Netflix for a long time, especially in the Netherlands. It's with Kevin Spacey. Really actually interesting film. I really love this film, and it kind of immediately shows you that, when you watch the film, it's very different than the regular Hollywood film. So that's something you immediately notice. The Breakfast Club is one. What else do we have out here? It's Pulp Fiction. Fucking Quentin Tarantino. A lot of people don't know this, but Quentin Tarantino, his first few films were independent films. Now he's like this huge Hollywood guy. Pulp Fiction kind of changed everything for him. It made him, he already was like famous in his, filmmaker group, but when he made Pulp Fiction, he kind of became this household name. Like everybody knew Quentin Tarantino after Pulp Fiction, and that's when he kind of became now the person he is now, which is like a big Hollywood guy, which was always his dream. So let me see if we have another one. We have like The Virgin Suicides, The Runaways, Poison Ivy, 500 Days of Summer. Let's see, Run Lola Run. Damn, I've never seen that one actually. I really want to see it. I heard that she lost a shit ton of weight for the film because she is constantly running. Don't know even why. Reservoir Dogs, obviously, the first one from Quentin Tarantino. And it's actually even named the greatest independent film of all time. So if you haven't seen Reservoir Dogs, definitely fucking watch it, because it's kind of one of those must things if you like films, at least. No Country for Old Men. This is a really interesting film because it's made by the Coen brothers, and actually this film has been on Netflix for a long time. And it's this Western crime drama, and it actually is an indie film, and it's also, when you watch it, very different from the regular Hollywood film. Well, I think this has kind of been... one last one, which is Juno. If you haven't seen Juno, fuck, you gotta watch it. It's super funny. It's a fresh, unusually intelligent comedy with dialogue so quick and funny you feel the actors are performing it on a high wire. Yeah, it's actually really funny. It's about this girl that gets pregnant. That's kind of it, Now, another reason, which is kind of linked to this, is that a lot of talent develops in the indie film scene. It starts there because a lot of people, there's so much talent in the world, and a lot of people don't have the option of going towards a executive producer from Hollywood. They don't have that option, so they actually have to do it themselves. And they often develop their own style and their own voice in that indie film scene, which is why it is so damn exciting to watch these new films coming out, and watch these like films that most people haven't even heard of. That's kind of one of the main reasons. Now, what is the exact difference between indie films and the mainstream film? Let's kind of round this off a little. The biggest difference, first of all, is budget, right? Because with Hollywood movies, they travel around the world. They build huge fucking sets. They have the biggest and most popular actors. And with that last one, actors, it's kind of, in indie films, most of the actors are unknown, which is kind of interesting. But there are in some indie films, there are like really big names involved because they just really like the script, and that's kind of brings it back to passion. Is because excuse me, is kind of because with indie films, the actor really has to like the script in order to be involved. So he'll put out his utmost, he has to be really interested to make the film, because there's not a huge paycheck involved. He kind of has to just find it really fucking interesting in order to do it. So when there are big actors involved, usually it's just because they find it really fucking interesting. Lastly, the biggest difference between indie films and mainstream films, it's a huge fucking difference, is the marketing, because huge Hollywood films are kind of made for the marketing, in order that there are certain scenes in the film, they have to have a certain amount of action, a certain amount of drama in order to put inside of the trailer. And sometimes the trailer even shows a completely different movie than what you're about to watch. But that's one of those things that Hollywood films really have to focus on, because they have to be able to market it. It's not marketable, there aren't enough people that are going to see it, and they won't make enough money back. Well, this was kind of what I was trying to share. This short podcast, only a few minutes long. This was Midnight Thoughts, and my recommendation for what to watch this weekend, which I'll always add at the end, is fucking Midnight Cowboy. Midnight Cowboy is an X-rated film that won Best Picture. It's from 1969 and features some really heavy subjects, especially for the time. It's about a guy who finds himself to go to New York to become a gigolo, where he then will have to hustle in order to stay alive. I mean, if that doesn't attract your interest, I don't know what will. It's a really fucking amazing film. Again, won multiple titles, won an Oscar. Fucking check it out. I don't think it's on Netflix anymore. It used to be on Netflix. Maybe it is in your country. I don't know. But have a good evening. Sleep well. And see you later. See you next time. Goodbye.